the more we say yes to love over fear, the more we lean in with courage, the more we unravel and awaken. Courage is like literally like the gasoline to the fire. Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj, co-founder at Liberate, and it's my mission to help you become the most grounded, loving, and authentic version of yourself that you can be. Each week, I interview guests in the fields of mindset, spirituality, and emotional well-being. My brilliant guests share their tools, tips, and unique perspectives to help you develop the skills you need to show up for the people that matter most in your life. Now let's dive in. Yo, what's up, everyone? And welcome to the third installment of this series called Vehicles for Awakening. In the last two episodes of this mini-series, we talked about health as a vehicle for awakening, and the next one we talked about love and relationships as a vehicle for awakening. Well, in this one, we're going to go a layer deeper and talk about something that I believe doesn't matter if it's expressed in work, it's expressed in relationship, it's expressed in health, ultimately, courage as a vehicle for awakening. Now, courage, and what do I mean by this? Really, when we have the courage to live a life that is more authentic to us, it forces us to let people down, or quote unquote, let people down. It forces us to go against the grain of what's acceptable in society. It forces us to change our relationship to uncertainty and the unknown, and to really examine our fears and insecurities and beliefs about what is possible for our lives and what we're capable of creating. And so when we think about courage, that journey of having courage, of embodying courage, of living with courage is one of the greatest vehicles for awakening. And so today I'm joined with my brother, Alex, and we're going to dive deep on this journey of the heart. Really, I think one of the greatest quotes I read early on in my journey was, the longest journey a man will ever take is from his head to his heart. And I think that captures this one and this whole journey of awakening beautifully, and this journey of coming back to self. When I say awakening, what is that? It's awakening to your authenticity, right? And that journey from the mind, which is all based in what you should do, what you're supposed to do, what you can do, what you can't do, what you're capable of, all those limitations up here. The heart is wild. The heart is expressive. The heart is that sort of jolt of inspiration, or that like deep well of knowing that you just get hit with. And everybody has those moments, but very few have practiced the courage, and more are in the world now. I see so many people really pursuing a life of authenticity, but this is what this is about. Like, when we say yes to life and allow life to give you an opportunity to grow, I can't think of a more profound vehicle for awakening.
Mm-hmm. So what does that look like for you? What does leaning in with courage in these moments look like in your life?
I mean, the first one that comes to mind was me choosing to be an entrepreneur. Right? Like, I used to be a petroleum engineer working in a cubicle at a large, big four oil company. And then I read The 4-Hour Workweek, and that was like the first instance of like, oh, okay, like curiosity and courage. It's like, maybe there's an opportunity for me to have a little side hustle. And then that led to me taking a few risks, putting in my first few $1,000s to order inventory for my first company, which is a coffee company. And each of those moments had micro moments of fear. Like, I remember making my first cold call, or to call somebody to like sell something. It was like a micro moment of fear. But each of those moments were profound moments of me awakening and showing myself that there's actually nothing to be afraid of. And on the other side of fear is this beautiful green grass. And I think that, to me, is the most accessible, practical form of awakening, is going from fear to love, right? Like, I love this vision I have in my heart, or this idea, this vision I have in my life for what I want, this dream I have. Well, giving yourself the permission to dream it, and then giving yourself the opportunity to act on that, is going to bring up all your stuff. It's going to bring up your fears about failure. It's going to bring up your insecurities. It's going to bring up what will my parents say? It will bring up everything. Oh, it's too late. I have a family. I can't do this. All the fears. And although there may be a version of truth inside of it all of it's also just a fabrication of the mind, right? So this is why I believe, for me at least, it started with entrepreneurship, and that really forced me to like examine, like every time I take a bigger risk, every time I take another leap of faith, every time I jump off a cliff and see if I could grow wings on the way down, I did. And it was messy and going through all the things and taught me so much.
Mm.
And so, I really, for me at least, entrepreneurship was that path. Walking away from from a 9-year relationship that looked great on paper and made everyone in my life happy. But me on the inside, I just knew it wasn't the right fit for me. I mean, that took a lot of courage, and that then opened up a whole world of awakening and truth. And so there's something about that, like when we're inside of a life that is not true to us, when we practice the courage to leave that life, you will be confronted with all of the resistance, the fear, the voices, the aspects of self that want to keep you inside of complacency or safety or security or comfort. But ultimately on the inside, you're not radically expressing and experiencing the depths of what you are here to experience.
Yeah. Take me to an example recently in your life that you ran up against an inner barrier. Maybe it's with your professional life, maybe it's with Liberate, maybe it's with relationships. Because I know that it started out small in those little micro moments. I got to make a sales call. I have to do this. Now, what does it look like for you?
Man, all right, I'll share one. I mean, this is pretty vulnerable, but we got to a point where Liberate had like a month of cash left. We have lots of employees, the whole thing, and we were getting really close to the end. And I was, on the road trying to make things happen. And in those moments you have two options. Either fold and tell everybody on the team that this is where we are, right? Which is ultimately one choice that I could have made. I could have made that choice to be like, okay, this is where we are. We have, this much cash left, guys. This is where we are. And some might say that that's the responsible thing to do, because if you fail, then what? Right? Then you've done all this. I made the choice to trust that I was going to close an investor right in the nick of time. And I'd been kind of on this path, working it, and lo and behold, with a month left, I found an investor, closed him, and team's great, team is safe. In fact, team is thriving. And everything has shifted. And that micro moment decision of me not choosing to, because ultimately, if I would have said everything I needed to say to the team, that would be me actually energetically creating a plan B. And that to me signifies that fear. When there is no option but success, that's what you get. This has come after years of me now on the path, right? Like before, I used to be terrified to make a cold call. Now I'm, on the wire, raising capital to pay, lots of people. So I'm now evolved and gotten to that point in my journey. But that was a spiritual decision for me. It's like, do I actually embody my power as a creator? Or do I fold to the limitations that my mind has created for me?
And what was that moment like for you? Did you find the old programming trying to come back online a lot? Was it scary? Was it fearful?
Of course it was scary. Of course it was fearful. Of course it was, of course, right? There's all the doubts. There's like, Raj, like, you don't want to let people down. There's all the fear. But this is why it's important to practice emotional hygiene when you're on this path, right? Like I remember when I first got started down this entrepreneurial journey, I launched Stay Grounded. Stay Grounded was actually like an early podcast. And initially I'd bring on so many coaches and healers and experts to like help me actually get insight to manage my own fears, insecurities, and things that were showing up on my entrepreneurial journey. Right? Like, even for me, like my relationship to money was a really big one. And this whole journey has really helped me become aware of what my unconscious beliefs are. How much money is there in the world? How easy it is to get? What do I need to be or do or have to be worthy of money? Like that's its own exploration, and it's worthy of its own podcast, to be honest, just because there's so much in there. But, for me, it was like in the very beginning, like I remember being so afraid every single time, like we'd have like a down sales week. I would just, my whole nervous system would just be in a complete state of shock. It's like my mind had beliefs and attachments to what it meant to have a certain amount of money in the bank and what felt safe and what doesn't feel safe. And so I guess when I think about that, like, and I look at my journey, like I've done so much work because every time those experiences have happened, I felt it. And I worked with coaches and I have support to really work through those beliefs. Like, what are my beliefs about money, or what are my beliefs about safety and security that are preventing me from allowing large sums of money to go in and out of my bank account with no fear? And there's programs, and that's the piece. It's like, so when we actually zoom out and we look at like, okay, this courage to go try this thing. Let's say I want to leave a relationship, or you want to go and take a chance on yourself in business, or you want to quit your job and go travel the world. There are fears that are going to prevent you from doing those things. What's powering those fears? And where are they coming from? And what voice are they? Are they your parents' voice? Are they the voice of your school teachers growing up? Are they the voice of religion and church? What are the voices? And that's why I believe this, again, saying yes to life path is such a powerful accelerator for awakening and coming to authenticity and really creating a meaningful life, because it forces you to unravel from the programming that got you stuck in a state of in the first place. And now I'm not going to say this life that I'm living right now is for everybody, because it's not. There's a lot of uncertainty and risk, and it's wild, and it's not for everybody, but it's for me. And it's what I've created for myself. And that's ultimately what I'm, I guess, sharing here is, by you looking at it and examining what's preventing you from saying yes to life and saying yes to yourself, and actually looking at and examining those limiting beliefs and those fears and moving through the denser layers of emotion that are keeping those limiting beliefs trapped and stuck. And every single time you run into a scenario where something's happening, you just get this full... I used to be so afraid of how I was perceived online, and it would take me so long to record podcasts.
Yeah.
Now, because of the work I've done, we can sit here and just jam out, and it's a part of the journey. So I guess it's just like, what I'm trying to say is, the more we say yes to love over fear, the more we lean in with courage, the more we unravel and awaken. Courage is like literally like the gasoline to the fire. And the thing I believe that is an ingredient, curiosity and courage, I would say, those two, and compassion. Curiosity, courage, compassion are, I think, those three. Self-compassion, because when you go down that path, ultimately you're going to meet moments where you fail, or things don't work out, or you get your heart broken, or you swung for the fences because that was your dream and it just all fell apart. And those moments are profound moments to heal and grow. And those are moments that are worth experiencing too. I've experienced lots of dark nights of the souls, and that's a part of this life, I think. But again, the soul was not put here to just be comfortable. The soul was put here to experience all of life, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And to feel the richness of it all, because all of it, the soul just wants to grow upwards and upwards and upwards. And the more resistance we have to that, the more suffering we experience. And that's ultimately what this entire series has been about: crisis, vehicles for awakening. Like all of these moments are opportunities to really dig deep and experience the depths of you.
Mm. Yeah. And courage is really, like, in your life, have you seen it be a choice in every moment between courage and fear, or courage and backing away?
I mean, yeah, courage is at the front of it all. Like I really feel that. I mean, there's always an opportunity to lean in, right? It could be the courage to say the thing that you're really afraid to say to somebody. I mean, in fact, the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the number of difficult conversations you're willing to have. So the courage to have a difficult conversation, the courage to say your truth and speak it, the courage to ask for the raise, the courage to go to the girl or boy and say what you want to say. Like, these are the moments, man, that like make life juicy and worth it and fun and exhilarating and full of enchantment. Like, like there's an enchanting nature to allow courage to be at the forefront of your lived existence. And it's mythic. You think about the hero's journey, like the entire thing is a mythic journey, and the ingredient is courage. The whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I actually believe archetypally we are designed and put on this planet to practice courage. I think that is our truth. There's a reason why we have a mind, right? Like there's a reason why we have a mind that gets in the way of all the things. And I believe it's so that we can practice courage. The mind was put in us so that the soul could awaken. Because without the opposition of fear and the rational mind, what does the soul have in opposition to it? There's no growth. There's no opportunity to ascend. So to me, courage is the ingredient for ascension.
Yeah. Courage and curiosity, and probably enthusiasm in some ways, well, towards life. But even then, sometimes it's like, there's a lot of times where
I think curiosity feeds enthusiasm. Curiosity is that childlike wonder.
Yeah. We've talked about it before, but becoming the witness. And that's the difference between curiosity and fear, or like reaction, immediate reaction, is becoming the witness of my situation, my feelings, my emotions, versus being in them, And so, I think like when you're looking at specifically like entrepreneurship, there's new problems, there's new challenges, there's new things to get through every single day. And people and leadership, a lot of the things that you deal with on a daily basis that, I mean, you very easily could just choose not to be courageous in those moments. And as a result, likely things would just fall away.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Every moment we have a choice: courage or comfort. That's it. It's really every single moment we have a choice. Comfort's not a bad thing. I don't always want to be on the throes of life, living at the edge. That's not it. Like, there are moments where I actually choose comfort. Only you know what's true, though. Only you know, right? The pendulum is always in action, right? Like, so it's like, just have that radical honesty with yourself, and don't allow yourself to actually believe the voices that are in your mind. Challenge them. If the voices in your mind said, "Oh, there's no way that she would love me, she would like me," test it. A big part of the inner work is engaging with life, right? Because I could go sit on a mountain and get really fucking enlightened really fast, sure. Go and access states of God through being, right? But there's nothing like throwing yourself into a challenge, a project, a thing you've never done, a relationship,
your parents' house.
It's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's go. Like, that's Ron Duskler. Like, if you want to see how enlightened you are, go spend a week with your parents. Like, boom. Now that is the material. That's the dojo. Life is the dojo for us to evolve. And I continue seeing that. It's just, I feel like we're playing this game. It's a game. This whole thing is just one big game.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no winning and losing. There's only learning. There's no failure. And these are beliefs that I've had to shift over the years, right? Like I used to have a very terrible relationship to failure. But in fact, it wasn't even failure. I just didn't want to be seen failing because of how I was so afraid of being perceived. That was my like unraveling that I had to let go of. How am I being perceived by the world? And that's taken time and opportunities. But every moment you have an opportunity to be seen, say yes. And you're literally reprogramming and showing yourself that it's safe to be seen making mistakes. It's safe to be wrong. It's safe to drop the ball. It's safe to hurt another person. Not physically, obviously. Like nobody do that. But like it's okay to say the wrong thing and hurt somebody's feelings. Is what I mean. Like that's what I mean. Like it's like we're almost training ourselves to be okay with the discomfort, the feelings of discomfort that are associated with saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is the ultimate spiritual journey. I think if I had to really zoom out to the whole thing, when you don't have any feeling to fear, you are free. So when you have anything in life that forces you to feel something you don't want to feel, say yes. Because the more you do that, the more you liberate yourself and you get to that space of what I would call, instead of enlightenment, I appreciate liberation. I think that's more of what I'm drawn to experience. I don't necessarily want to get to some state of like bliss at all times. I want to get to a state where I can be in any situation, in any challenge, in any crisis, in any discomfort and feel free and feel in my power, in my center. And that's me because I'm liberated from the stories, from the attachments, from the aspects of self that keep me stuck in suffering.
Yeah. Just thinking about like the courage, this whole series has been about vehicles of awakening. There'll probably be many more episodes about different other things. Like you were talking about money and there's so many things that you could talk about because anything really could be used as a vehicle for awakening.
Well, that's the piece that, when we were starting this series, I was like, they're all going to bleed together.
Yeah.
Everything is going to bleed together because ultimately you are the common denominator and certain qualities. And what's cool about this podcast, at least this series, is how we're kind of figuring out some of these principles along the way. Courage wasn't really one of them until we recorded the other two. And then we're like, oh crap, like actually that's the meta vehicle for awakening, is saying yes to life. Because when you just have that frame of, okay, can I say yes to life? You're going to be confronted with your fears, your insecurities, your worries, your beliefs. And that's ultimately when I say vehicles for awakening, what are the things that are going to help you unravel your shadow the fastest? What are the aspects of self that are going to bring forth all the things about you that you weren't aware of? Facing your fears is one of them. Facing mortality, which is ultimately what facing fear is, facing uncertainty, right? It's death. Like when you don't know what's on the other side, death is the greatest focusing agent there is. Like it's like when you really are confronted with mortality, it focuses everything. Everything that was hiding underneath the things that you haven't said. There's a beautiful book called One Last Talk by a man named Philip McKernan, who was on my podcast a few years ago. And this book changed my life because he talked about like this premise of if you had to give one last talk before you died, what would it be? And I remember him, and he'd give examples of people that are like highly successful, that speak all over the world. But their one last talk was about something so deep in their soul. A message, a lesson, a principle, a guiding light. That is their soul message, their soul curriculum. And that to me is what I think facing fear brings forth in us. It's the same quality. Because the only thing to really fear is death. That's ultimately what all fears. When I even zoom out, like fear of not belonging, fear of not being worthy, like everything, like as children, You know, the way our psyches are formed, if a child doesn't get love, he or she doesn't feel safe. And when he or she doesn't feel safe, it's literally confronted with death. So everything comes back to death in my eyes, this whole thing. I guess that's another conversation, but like really changing our relationship to death is a part of embodying courage.
Mm. When you say, like, what's making sense in my head too is when you say saying yes to life, that makes sense to me in terms of trusting in the things that I can't see, trusting that there is a benevolent force guiding this whole thing, and that rather than trying to be the architect of the roller coaster, I just get to be on the ride.
You know, for me, it's kind of been like, I've had a few evolutions of this. Like in the beginning, I was afraid of taking the leap because I didn't trust that there was going to be someone there to catch me. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of shifted over where like, okay, I can take a leap because even if someone doesn't catch me, like the ground isn't that hard. So it's like so it's like you kind of get to the stage of like, all right, like, and then over time you start to realize, oh, actually, like there was a hand underneath the ground to keep it soft. So like I'm always taken care of is what the more you kind of just go down this path, like you just start to realize like you literally go from fear to faith and then faith to knowing. And then that knowing ends up being your operating system that's in alignment with all that is. Like if something doesn't work out, it's not going to be like, it's not rejection, it's redirection. It's moving me closer and closer to this thing that actually is mine. I'm getting closer and closer to what wants to find me. All of this is just chiseling away the aspects of self that are getting in the way of me experiencing true love, true intimacy, true money, true success, all of it. But it takes trust and commitment to that path. Because if the only thing that could stop the blessings that come from courage is quitting. And there's a difference between quitting and letting go. Quitting is succumbing to the fear. Letting go is actually the bravest thing you could do. Letting go is an act of ultimate courage, because it's what you're saying is this thing I'm fighting for right now, I'm not going to fight anymore. Because what I know is that what wants to find me will be easy. I let you go. I let this go. I let this project go. I'm not going to fight for this company anymore. I let this relationship go.
What you're really letting go is the attachment to the outcome in your mind that you really want.
Yeah, the preference.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. Like this whole journey it forces you to look at what are you attached to. And the things you're attached to are not actually the things you really want. It's what your mind wants. It's some perception of safety, some perception of security, some perception of love.
Yeah.
True, the things that truly light you up are not things you're attached to. They're things you just experience. The things you're surprised, you're like surprisingly grateful for. Like the gratitude, that energy of gratitude is really the piece of things that I think we're all actually seeking, which is why I think gratitude is such a powerful practice for this journey of saying yes to life. Because the more you allow yourself to be grateful for whatever's in front of you, the more things you notice you have, like the more things you end up being grateful for. And it's this crazy, beautiful cycle of you constantly being in awe of what's here.
Yeah.
And it allows you to see the blessings in what's here instead of staying attached to a timeline or a thing or a place.
Yeah.
And that gives me courage. It helps me feel my courage.
Yeah. I see life as like, I believe that there is a ultimate timeline for me, which is like God's timeline. And then there's a timeline that my brain creates for me. And my prayer daily is just like, help my brain get on the same timeline, get on that timeline with God.
Oh boy, it takes time.
It does. Absolutely.
I'll be honest and say like, that's a hard one for me. It still is. Like I'm not the best. I've gotten a lot better, I think, in the last few months of like really trusting that if it's not in front of me, there's a better reason. And there's something still left for me to experience. And that to me is the question in my prayer. It's like, okay, if I don't have this already, like, what am I here to learn? Is it patience? Am I here to, did I miss something? Is there something about me that needs to grow and evolve? Do I need to humble myself? Like, where's my growth? Where's my edge? And that line of inquiry has been incredibly nourishing and valuable because it then shifts my focus away from why isn't it here to what can I control today?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a soothing nature. It's like how can I show up? How can I love? How can I serve? How can I just make the most of this moment if this is truly all there is?
And like, it comes back to the trust, but if you trust that everything that's meant to come to you will come to you at its time, at its proper time.
Yeah.
Like a really good example of this is in my relationship. There's been times where I want a certain conversation to happen, or I want to be at a certain step in the relationship, and it's just not time for that, you know? And every time I try to force that, including work, including relationships, including everything, every time I try to force myself into something that I think I should be in, but God, the universe is telling me like, no, it's not really, that's not the time for that yet. It creates this like discord. And then when I let go and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go on this path and I'm going to serve and I'm going to be present. I'm going to do what's around me right now. It all falls into place.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Like, it's coming back to, dating and intimacy and relationships. Like, the more you fight to find it, the less it wants to find you.
Mm-hmm.
So the ultimate courage is in letting go and focusing on yourself and doing what you love and following that path and trusting that just doing what you love and following passion and following that authentic, courageous, brave exploration of life, following your fear. I think fear to me is a compass. Like, The War of Art does it beautifully. Stephen Pressfield, he wrote one of my favorite books of all time, which is The War of Art. And in the book, he talks about how fear and resistance is your North Star. If you just keep following fear, doing your things that you're afraid of, saying the things you're afraid to say, just keep following that thread, somehow, some way, you'll end up experiencing exactly what you want. And maybe even more than that, the things you didn't even know you wanted. And that to me is how it's how I've lived my life in the last several years. It's like, what am I afraid of? And how can I just keep saying yes? And I feel super grateful. Like, I'm in a beautiful relationship with a stunning goddess I'm in. I have an incredible company where I'm the leader and CEO, and we get to help tons of people. I have an epic podcast. I have great friends like you. I've got, this came from saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
This came from having courage. And like I said, I don't think my life is for everybody, but I do think that a life of courage can be for everybody if they choose it and if they allow it. And I don't think there's anything more fun than living a life of courage, because that is the life of liberation. It's a life of freedom.
Mm-hmm. You step on the ride, it gets really fun.
It gets really fun, really exciting, really ecstatic, really... Yeah, and it takes work. It takes work and that work comes in the form of community. It comes in the form of really examining your relationship to fear, to uncertainty, to money, to your self-worth, your capability. It requires you to shift your relationship to time. That was a big one for me. Am I running out of time? Am I running out of time? Like, I need to get this done by a certain date. It's like that. And then that creates the frenzy and it drives the actions. But it's like, what if, coming back to your point, I could align my timeline with God's timeline and trust that they're both, like, what can I do to align myself with God's timeline? What if God had a better plan for me than I even knew was possible?
Absolutely.
And that to me is the ultimate. If you actually let yourself want what God wants for you.
Yeah. Then everything that comes up, something comes up and immediately you have I don't like that. This shouldn't happen. You start to think, why would God bring this into my life right now? Like, what's going on? And then it starts to shift it to where if you lose a business deal, if you lose a relationship, if you lose a loved one. It's not that it makes everything happy. It's just a deeper understanding of, oh, this is okay. I guess I just can't see why this is supposed to be happening right now, but it is. And there's an inherent trust there instead of a scramble to try to control everything and like grasp everything and make it your way,
Mm-hmm.
which ultimately creates more grasping and more control. And then it all breaks. But like the trust is the opposite of that, where something happens completely unexpected. We have no control over anything in our lives. And then when something happens, you just get to go,
Well,
okay,
this
I'm
is
gonna
why,
trust.
I always felt like COVID was the greatest awakening of all. It was one of the greatest vehicles of awakening for everybody.
That's an episode.
That's its own little flavor. But at that point, like I didn't plan to have a pandemic. When I was in January of 2020, I was mapping out a year of epic travel and epic speaking. I remember I was speaking at an event in Mexico in January. I was like on fire. I was doing the whole thing. And then now here we are. And so and how do we choose to respond in that moment? That to me was the biggest lesson in the whole pandemic for me was, okay, I could either fight what's happening or I could surrender and lean in. Okay, I could bitch about the fact that I can't go on dates right now. Or I could just trust that, okay, maybe I'm not meant to go on dates right now. It's time for me to do my inner work. Great. And so it's like when you just look at this zoom out and just look at the timelines and look at how things are, there's always a reason why something's showing up for you. And there's always something for you to get by just trusting what the medicine of what's showing up. And this is something this is actually what I talked about on my last reflection episode, was like, can I trust the magic of Natalie showing up today? Even though I don't think I was ready for a relationship like the one I have right now. In my mind, I was like, oh, I'm not ready for something like that. Like I need to build more. I need to go and get liberated a little further along. I need to have all these things before I can. But God's like, nope. Okay, Raj, can you receive? Can you receive? Can you allow yourself to just trust whatever's here is here?
Mm-hmm.
And that takes courage. Because what you're really saying is, okay, I'm going to let go of the plan I have in my mind to trust the magic and the medicine of what's here.
Yeah.
That is awakening. That is like increasing your capacity to be with more of life. That is doing the inner work.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at all the programs that are preventing you from just allowing what wants to find you.
Yeah. And it is courage because it takes a lot of that. Like, when you say, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be dating right now, and you let your hands off the wheel, there is a possibility that you could never find somebody. And so when you let go of that, you're letting go of the need to go and grasp and find and do. And that is the energy that allows you to be whole enough to bring that in.
I just want to name, you brought something really important up. That fear. Maybe I'll be alone forever. Most people are so afraid of feeling that fear that they will do everything in their power to not. But when you allow yourself to feel the depths of that, the truth is you may never actually end up with someone. Feel it to your bones. Go into the depths of allowing that sadness, that grief to move you, to change you, to transform you, to alchemize you. And then go live your life and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, you will end up meeting the person you're meant to experience. And this is the piece that most people don't understand, that I have learned over the years now of validating this theory. When you feel the thing you don't want to feel, you release it and you transform it, and then the universe rebounds you with the thing you want. But it's like, this is like paying the tax for it.
Mm-hmm.
The tax to getting what you want is feeling the thing you don't want to feel. But if you spend your life running from that feeling, so you don't have to feel it, so you don't have to be with it, so you don't have to process it, so you don't have to sit with it, you're not going to activate the energetic reciprocation of the universe, because the universe is constantly wanting to move into more love. This is my theory of change in the universe and being in existence. And so through all of us, she is constantly giving us opportunities to release the denser aspects of self that are not rooted in trust. And so when we feel the feelings, the fears of, I'll give you the example of raising capital. I went and felt the fear of letting my entire team down. I felt it. It was it was not fun, but it was like, oh my God, like I'm the worst. I'm sorry. I literally played out like, I'm sorry, this person, I'm sorry. And I literally just went into the cycle of just playing it out as if it already happened. And I cried and I bawled and I felt all the shame. And I was with a coach, and it was just like, and then when it was gone, I felt free. And I was like, okay, well, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's play. And it happened.
Yeah.
And so this is the piece I want to impress again, because feeling the thing you don't want to feel, the thing you are most afraid of feeling, does not mean it's going to come true. In fact, you are going to liberate the hold it has on you, so you can go live an authentic life without attachment, which then allows for the thing to find you. And that to me is a formula that works for me over and over and over again.
Yeah.
On this
Same
path
here.
of saying yes to being in life.
Same. If I find myself striving for something or reaching for an outcome, or I notice myself being really attached to a specific outcome, I will sit with it and go, one, like, why am I feeling that way? And then two, can I release that, or can I be okay with that outcome happening or not happening and truly feeling that? And when I was single for a long time, I really sat with like, what if I'm single till I'm 60? Like, could I still live a happy, fulfilled, purposeful life? And when I got to the yes, I just can't describe the feeling of wholeness, the feeling of just like being that magnet, that energy. Like, it all just came, and it was because there was zero sense of lack there. I knew that like a partner, a person was not going to complete me. It wasn't going to like make my life, mean something. My life already meant something. Like, I was already the person that I was looking for. And that was like the biggest switch for me. So now whenever I feel that, like, oh my gosh, I want to be really successful. What if I'm not really successful? I just sit with it and go like, could I be happy like working at a coffee shop for the rest of my life? And when the answer is truly yes, like really yes, it's just like everything in my life changes.
Yeah. And so I'll be honest, if I think about, would I be happy working at a coffee shop for the rest of my life? The answer is not yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, this is an interesting point, because what you're actually saying is, when you're okay with the worst case scenario, everything else is a bonus.
It's not even like that's a bad scenario to be in. It's more so just like, if my plan for my life is to go be materially successful and run this thing, and God's plan for my life is for me to go and do a no name, no face job for the rest of my life, could I
So
still?
so what you're saying is, okay, so I hear what you're saying now. So what you're actually saying is, if the thing I'm most afraid of is actually the thing that God wants for me, then there's a gift in that, right? Like, there's a gift in you being afraid to go there, like letting yourself go there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the piece that what I'm hearing in this conversation is just like the courage to let yourself go there. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the courage to, if you're a woman, like the courage to let yourself feel the potential grief of not being a mom, if that's what you want the most. If you're a man, I would say it's the fear of letting your people down. Like, for me, that's my biggest, is letting the people in my life down and not being able to show up in a way that really, like, it's like letting them down. But like, even if I say that out now, like, I don't really have that anymore.
Right.
Because I felt it.
Right.
I don't have that one anymore. So now I'm just like, there's no letting anyone down because it's just not going to happen. I will not let anyone down. I can't let anyone down. Even if I fall short, it's not letting them down. So the story's changed, the energy's changed, which is now shifting the way that I move through my life. And so there's a key here in this, because I think actually if anybody listening, you really just grasp this one concept out of this entire podcast, you will have given yourself a magic key towards experiencing a life that is so rich and meaningful and so free of suffering, because at the root of all suffering is a fear of feeling.
I agree. I think that's a great place to wrap this episode.
This was great. Yeah, I'm really glad we ended here. And for everybody listening, if you want to get more insights like these and go deeper, please join our newsletter. It's www.rajana.com/stay grounded. We share tons of, we're going to be sharing a lot more insights like these to really continue this journey of awakening and really giving you the tools and resources and entry points to access more of you. So that's that. Alex, thanks so much for being here, brother, for guiding the conversation. And that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. This is your old friend, Alex. And from us, stay grounded. We'll chat soon. Thanks so much for joining this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I hope it was fulfilling, nourishing, inspiring, and brought you into your heart. This one was really fun for me to record. I've never really unpacked the concept of courage in the way that I did today, so it was really fun. Thank you guys for being here. As I mentioned on the end of the episode, if you haven't signed up for my newsletter already, head to rajana.com/stay grounded to hear more about insights and takeaways and the offerings that we're going to have coming up for individuals that want support going deeper. We're going to be launching a new community in the new year that's really inspired around helping you do the deeper inner work, lean into courage, and really activate more of it in your daily life. So if that's interesting to you, sign up for my newsletter to learn more, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajana.com/liberate. That is LIBER8 to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.